The moment the Korean Mafia boss looked at my name tag, the color drained from his face. I remember that moment clearly because, only 10 seconds earlier, he had looked at me like I was invisible. I had been standing beside the private elevator of the most expensive hotel in Seoul, holding a black folder against my chest. I was wearing a simple cream blouse, black trousers, and a small hotel-style name tag. That was enough for him to make his first mistake. He walked toward me with 4 men behind him. Everyone in the lobby seemed to know who he was. Staff members lowered their heads. Guests moved aside. Even the security guards suddenly became very careful about where they stood. I had heard his name before. Kang Junho. People called him a businessman in public. Behind closed doors, they called him something else. The Korean Mafia boss. I had never met him before, but I knew the rumors. He was powerful, cold, and used to getting whatever he wanted. That afternoon, he looked directly at me. "You," he said. I looked behind me. There was nobody else. He pointed toward my folder. "Take my luggage upstairs." His voice was calm, but it carried the kind of command that made people move without thinking. I looked at him. Then I looked at the 4 men standing behind him. Finally, I looked back at him. "I think you have the wrong person." His eyebrows tightened. "I don't repeat myself. I heard you the first time." The lobby became strangely quiet. One of his men looked at me as if I had just walked into a lion's cage. Junho stepped closer. "You work here, don't you?" "No." His eyes moved over my clothes. Then he noticed the name tag. He reached out and read it. His entire expression changed. Maya Williams. For the first time since he entered the hotel, Kang Junho looked completely shocked. And that was when I realized something. He knew my name. More importantly, he knew exactly who I was. 3 hours earlier, I had arrived at the Hanseong Grand Hotel in Seoul for a meeting that had taken 6 months to arrange. I had flown in from New York 2 days before. The meeting was important enough that my company had sent me to Seoul personally. I was the International Development Director for Williams Global Partners, a company that handled international development projects and business partnerships across several countries. I had spent years earning that position. Nobody had handed it to me. I had started at the bottom. I had worked late nights, studied contracts until my eyes hurt, learned how to negotiate with people from different cultures, and sat in rooms where I was often the youngest person there. I was also used to being underestimated. As a Black woman working in international business, I had learned that some people made decisions about me before I ever opened my mouth. Sometimes they saw my skin. Sometimes they saw my clothes. Sometimes they saw a woman and assumed I would be easy to push aside. I had stopped wasting energy being angry about it. Instead, I learned to watch. People often told you who they were when they thought you were beneath them. That lesson had helped me more than any business course I had taken. When I entered the hotel that afternoon, a young staff member greeted me. "Ms. Williams." "Yes. Mr. Park is waiting for you upstairs." "Thank you." I smiled and continued toward the private elevator. The hotel manager had arranged a temporary identification tag for me because the meeting area was restricted. It looked like a staff badge. I did not think much about it. That small detail would later change everything. As I waited for the elevator, I received a message from my assistant. The private meeting was still scheduled for 4 o'clock. The other side had confirmed. Everything was ready. Except there was one problem. The person I was supposed to meet was Kang Junho. I had known that from the beginning. What I had not known was how badly he wanted the meeting. His company needed the international partnership. My company controlled the final approval. That meant something important. I was not there to ask him for anything. He was there because he needed me. I stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, I looked at my reflection. I straightened my blouse. I took a breath. Then I told myself what I always told myself before a difficult meeting. Stay calm. Listen carefully. Never let someone else's power make you forget your own. At exactly 4 o'clock, I walked into the private conference room. The room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul. The city looked beautiful from that height. Traffic moved like tiny lines of light below us. I placed my folder on the table. Then I waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. At 12 minutes, the door opened. Kang Junho walked in. He looked exactly like the man I had seen in the lobby. Dark suit, cold eyes, perfect posture. 4 men followed him, but they stopped near the door. Junho looked at me. For 1 second, I saw confusion in his eyes. Then recognition. His face changed again. You. I nodded. Yes. He stared at me. You're Ms. Williams? Yes. He slowly looked at the folder in front of me. Then at my name. Then back at my face. I could almost see the memory forming in his mind. The woman he had mistaken for hotel staff. The woman he had ordered to carry his luggage. The woman who had refused. Now sitting at the head of the conference table. I gestured toward the chair across from me. Please sit. He did not move immediately. One of his men looked away, almost as if he was trying not to smile. Junho finally sat. I opened my folder. I believe we have a lot to discuss. He leaned back. You knew who I was in the lobby. I knew your name. And you still refused my order. I wasn't hotel staff. His mouth tightened. I see. I looked directly at him. Do you? For the first time, he had no quick answer. I began the meeting. The contract was complicated. There were financial conditions, legal protections, international rules, and deadlines. Junho was smart. Very smart. That became clear within minutes. He asked difficult questions. I answered them. He challenged one section. I explained it. He challenged another. I showed him the numbers. For almost 2 hours, we debated every major point. There was no shouting, no threats, no dramatic display of power. Just 2 people trying to decide whether they could trust each other with a serious business deal. By the end of the meeting, something had changed. I could see it. He was no longer looking at me as a woman he had mistaken for hotel staff. He was looking at me as an equal. And I realized that this was only the beginning. If you enjoy stories where an underestimated woman turns the tables on someone who judged her too quickly, subscribe before we continue. The next morning, I expected the meeting to be finished. It wasn't. At 8:15 a.m., I received a message from Junho's office. He wanted another meeting. I almost declined. Then I saw the reason. A major part of the agreement had changed overnight. I went back to the hotel conference room. Junho was already there. This time, he stood when I entered. It was a small gesture, but I noticed it. Good morning, Ms. Williams. Good morning. He pointed toward the chair. Please. I sat down. He remained standing for a moment. I owe you an apology. I looked up. For yesterday? Yes. I waited. He seemed uncomfortable. That surprised me. A man who controlled an entire room looked unsure about what to say to one woman. I made an assumption about you, he said. I closed my folder. No. You made a decision about me before learning who I was. He looked at me. You're right. Those 2 words mattered. Most powerful people did not like admitting they were wrong. Junho had just done it. I saw the name tag, he continued. I saw your clothes. I decided what your position was. And you decided I was beneath you. His jaw tightened. Yes. I appreciated the honesty. But you weren't the first person to do it, I said. He looked surprised. I told him that I had spent years dealing with people who confused appearance with ability. I told him that being a Black woman in international business had taught me to expect certain assumptions. But I also told him something else. I don't need everyone to understand me, I said. I only need to understand who I'm dealing with. He remained silent. That conversation changed the way he treated me. But it also changed the way I saw him. Because beneath the cold exterior, I had noticed something. He was listening. Not pretending. Actually listening. Over the next 3 days, we worked together. And slowly, the distance between us began to change. The business project forced us to spend long hours together. We visited a development site outside Seoul. We reviewed documents. We met with legal teams. We discussed international expansion. Everywhere we went, people treated Junho with caution. I began to understand why. He had built a reputation that made people afraid to disagree with him. But I disagreed with him constantly. You're taking too much risk, I told him during one meeting. He looked at me. No one has said that to me today. I don't care. His lips almost formed a smile. You really don't. No. That time, he laughed. It was the first time I had heard it. It changed his entire face. The cold man disappeared for a moment. There was simply a tired man sitting across from me. That was when I started wondering what had happened to him. One evening, we were sitting in a quiet restaurant after a long meeting. Junho stared through the window. You don't seem afraid of me, he said. I've met people more frightening than you. Who? People who smile while they destroy someone else's confidence. He looked at me. You think I'm dangerous. I think you want people to think you're dangerous. He was quiet. Then he said something I did not expect. When I was young, I learned that weakness had a price. His voice had changed. He told me that his world had taught him never to show fear, never to admit uncertainty, and never to let anyone see him lose control. People respect strength, he said. People fear strength, I replied. That's not always the same thing as respect. He looked at me for a long time. That night, I saw a different side of him. Not the Korean Mafia boss people whispered about. Not the powerful businessman. Just Junho. A man who had spent years building walls around himself. And for the first time, I wondered what it would feel like if he ever let someone through them. 2 days later, I saw exactly why those walls existed. We were attending a private business dinner. Several executives were there. One man looked at me and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. So you're the American director, he said. Yes. He looked at my clothes. Then at Junho. I expected someone older. I said nothing. He continued. I suppose international companies are becoming more flexible. The room went quiet. I knew what he was doing. He was testing me, trying to see whether I would become angry. I simply smiled. I suppose they are becoming better at recognizing talent. A few people looked down to hide their reactions. The man's smile disappeared. Junho watched me. I didn't need him to rescue me. I had handled it myself. Later, outside the restaurant, he walked beside me. You were calm. I've had practice. You didn't need me. No. He stopped. I turned around. He looked at me with something I had never seen in his eyes before. Respect. Real respect. I thought you were going to defend me, I said. I wanted to. But you didn't. He shook his head. You didn't need defending. I smiled. That was the correct answer. He smiled too. Then he said, I think I'm beginning to understand you. No, I replied. You're beginning to listen to me. He laughed softly. Fair enough. That night, the attraction between us became impossible to ignore. But I knew better than to confuse attraction with trust. He was still a powerful man from a dangerous world. I was still a woman who had built her life on independence. Whatever happened between us, I would not become smaller to fit into his life. If this story has made you think about a time someone judged you before knowing you, comment with one word: respect. The next morning, everything changed. I discovered that one of the business documents had been leaked. Someone wanted the partnership to fail. Junho's team suspected an inside source. My company suspected his side. For several hours, everyone blamed everyone else. Junho became colder. The man I had started getting to know disappeared. His old instincts returned. He wanted immediate answers. He wanted someone punished. I stopped him. Wait. He looked at me. You don't know who did it. I'll find out. Without evidence? His eyes narrowed. You're asking me to do nothing? No. I'm asking you to think. The room became silent. I showed him the timeline. The leak had happened before his team received the document. That meant the information had not come from his office. I checked the digital records. Then the hotel access logs. Then the meeting schedule. Within an hour, we discovered the truth. The leak had come from a third-party consultant who wanted the partnership to collapse so another company could take the contract. Junho stared at the evidence. Then he looked at me. If I had acted on my first instinct, you would have blamed the wrong person. He nodded slowly. That was another lesson for him. Power could make people act quickly, but good judgment required patience. That evening, he came to see me. I almost became the man you first met. I looked at him. But you didn't. I wanted to. That matters too. He sat across from me. I don't want to be that man anymore. His voice was quiet. Why? He looked at me. Because when I look at you, I realize how much I was missing. My heart moved, but I stayed silent. He continued. You never tried to impress me. You never feared me. You never asked me for anything. That is true. And somehow, you're the first person who makes me want to become someone better. I looked away. I wasn't ready to give him an answer. Not yet. The final day of the project arrived faster than I expected. The agreement was ready. The partnership had been approved. The people who had doubted us had no choice but to accept the result. That afternoon, I returned to the same hotel lobby where everything had started. I stood beside the private elevator. The same place. The same lights. The same marble floor. Even the same kind of name tag was clipped to my blouse. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. Junho was walking toward me. He stopped several feet away. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then he looked at my name tag. He smiled. Ms. Williams. I raised an eyebrow. Much better. He laughed. I learned my lesson. Did you? I hope so. He came closer. But I didn't come here to talk about business. I know. He looked nervous. That was new. I want to ask you something. I waited. Would you have dinner with me? I smiled. Are you asking because you finally know my name? He shook his head. No. He looked directly into my eyes. I'm asking because now I know you. That answer reached me. Not because it was perfect. Because it was honest. I thought about the man who had walked into the hotel days earlier. The man who had looked at my skin, my clothes, and my name tag and decided he already knew my place. That man had been powerful. But he had not been wise. The man standing in front of me now was different. He had learned to listen. He had admitted when he was wrong. He had stopped treating respect like something people owed him. And most importantly, he had started seeing me. Not as a black woman he could impress. Not as a business partner. Not as someone beneath him. As a woman standing beside him. I accepted his invitation. But I gave him one warning. This doesn't mean I'm joining your world. I know. And it doesn't mean I'll agree with you all the time. I know. And if you ever treat me like hotel staff again. He smiled. I won't survive the second mistake. I laughed. For the first time, there was no power struggle between us. There was simply two people choosing to learn each other. And somehow, that felt more powerful than anything else. If you want more stories about unexpected love, powerful women, and people learning not to judge by appearances, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Looking back, the strangest part of the entire story wasn't that a Korean mafia boss had mistaken me for hotel staff. It was how quickly one small assumption could have changed everything. Junho had looked at my clothes. He had seen my skin. He had seen a name tag. Then he decided he knew my position. He was wrong. But the truth is, people make smaller versions of that mistake every day. We judge people by clothes. We judge people by accents. We judge people by age. We judge people by race. We judge people by gender. We decide who is intelligent, who is successful, who is important, and who deserves respect before we know their story. That is the first lesson I took from what happened. Appearance is not proof of ability. The second lesson was even more important. Respect should not depend on status. I did not deserve respect because I was a director. I deserved basic respect because I was a person. The same was true of the hotel workers Junho had thought I was. They deserved respect too. That was his real mistake. He didn't simply fail to recognize me. He believed someone with a lower position deserved less dignity. The third lesson was about power. Power can create blind spots. Junho was used to people obeying him. Because of that, he had stopped questioning his own assumptions. But true strength was not forcing people to obey. True strength was being strong enough to admit when you were wrong. The fourth lesson came from the way I handled the situation. I did not need to scream. I did not need to embarrass him. I did not need to prove my worth by destroying his. I stayed calm. I knew who I was. That was enough. And finally, I learned something about relationships. Romance cannot fix disrespect. Money cannot fix arrogance. Power cannot create trust. Before two people can build something real, they have to see each other as equals. Junho didn't become worthy of my trust because he was powerful. He became worthy of another chance because he was willing to change. That was what made our story different. The name tag didn't magically give me value. It only revealed what had already been there. I had been capable before he knew my name. I had been strong before he respected me. I had been worthy before he noticed me. And that was the lesson I never forgot. Never decide someone's value before you know their story. Because sometimes the person you overlook is the person who has the most to teach you. And sometimes, the biggest change in someone's life begins with one simple moment when they finally look again. So if someone has ever underestimated you because of how you looked, where you came from, or what they thought your position was, remember this. You do not have to become louder to become valuable. You do not have to become someone else to earn respect. Know who you are. Let your actions speak. And never allow someone else's first impression to become your identity. If this story gave you something to think about, share it with someone who needs that reminder. And remember, sometimes the person standing quietly beside the elevator isn't waiting for someone to tell them where they belong. Sometimes they already know exactly where they belong.